Last December, Reel to Reel brought you the story of the Nagasaki bell and a college professor's mission to restore a bell in a Japanese Catholic church that was destroyed by the atomic bomb. The segment ended while Jim Nolan was in the process of raising funds to make the project a reality. Steve Kiltonick spoke with Nolan about the project's successful conclusion this past summer.
In part one of the Nagasaki Bell project, Jim Nolan, a sociology professor at Williams College and a parishioner of Saints Patrick and Raphael Parish in Williamstown, was on a mission to raise funds to replace a bell that once rang in a tower of the Urakami Cathedral in Nagasaki, Japan, the largest in East Asia. The church and bell were destroyed by the atomic bomb that fell August 9, 1945, killing some 75,000 of the city's inhabitants, including an estimated 8,500 of the city's 12,000 Catholics. Before the bomb, the Urakami Cathedral had twin Angelus bell towers. The bell on the left was destroyed, but the right bell was recovered nearly intact. The surviving bell was placed in the right tower after the cathedral was rebuilt in 1959 and still rings today. What remains of the bell is in a museum next to the cathedral. The left tower has remained empty and silent since 1945, that is, until this summer. During a trip to Nagasaki in 2023, while conducting research for a book on the persecuted Catholics, Nolan spoke with a 72-year-old Urakami parishioner named Kojiro Moriuchi. Moriuchi, whose father survived the atomic blast, is a direct descendant to the hidden Christians who were persecuted in Japan for 250 years. Urakami, a suburban village of Nagasaki, was the center of the hidden Christian community. The movie Silence depicts the suffering Christians endured when Jesuit priests were exiled or executed. Moriuchi suggested to Nolan that it would be wonderful if American Catholics, as a goodwill gesture, gave a left bell to the Japanese as a replacement for the bell that was destroyed. His wish was to hear the new bell ringing again in his lifetime. Nolan thought that was a wonderful idea and was inspired to make Moriuchi's dream a reality.
After that visit, I began just exploring, well, what would this involve, looking at various foundries, doing some research on the original bell because we wanted to make it as much like the original bell as possible.
Nolan then wrote a letter to Archbishop Peter Nakamura of Nagasaki, explaining his proposition and goal to install it before the 80th anniversary of the bombing on August 9, 2025.
We told the Archbishop that we would pay for everything. So we would pay for the bell, the transportation, and the installation. And based on our various estimates, it became clear that the whole thing would cost about $125,000.
In the spring of 2024, Nolan began fundraising, inviting people to contribute to the project through the St. Kateri Institute. Nolan gave talks on the Nagasaki Catholics and the bell in various churches and universities across the country, from Boston to Seattle to Los Alamos, New Mexico, where the bomb was built.
It was a wonderful experience to see the way in which the story of the Nagasaki Catholics moved people.
The new bell weighs 750 pounds, roughly the same size and shape as the original, which was given to the Nagasaki Catholics by the French and features the image of Saint Martin of Tours, a French saint.
This was coming from Americans, so we thought it fitting to have an American saint. So the saint that is emblazoned on the bell that was given is St. Kateri Tekakwitha.
St. Kateri, the Lily of the Mohawks, is the first Native American saint who was persecuted by her own people in much the same way the Japanese Catholics were. Nolan reached his goal of $125,000 in March 2025 with donations from 628 Catholics. The bell was cast in the Netherlands and managed by St. Louis foundry, the McShane Bell Company. The bell was finished in February 2025. In May, it traveled from St. Louis to Nagasaki, and in June was put on display in a small museum next to the Urakami Cathedral with the original broken bell.
During that week, nearly 7,000 people came to look at the bell. People were very moved by it, and you saw some of these Catholic sisters actually praying in front of it in tears and seeing the symbolic significance of this gift from American Catholics to the Nagasaki Catholics.
The installation of the bell, named the St. Kateri Bell of Hope, took place on July 17th, when a crane lifted the bell into place in the second tower.
That's significant because that's feast day for St. Kateri in Canada. And St. Kateri died in Canada, and she at the time was living in St. Francis Xavier Village. And St. Francis Xavier, of course, is the Jesuit missionary who first brought the gospel to Japan back in 1549.
Nolan and Moriuchi spoke at the installation ceremony and rang the bell together.
He was absolutely overjoyed. Yeah, he goes, I can't even express my gratitude.
23 days later,
and then it rang out for the first time at 11:02 on August 9th, exactly 80 years from when it was destroyed by the atom bomb. What made me most glad was to see the joy in Moriuchi-san and in the other Urakami parishioners, to see their joy and their gratitude and their appreciation.
でのことで、今このプロジェクトを進めているんではなくて、本当にそのカトリックっていう同じ一つの宗教の中で同じ神様を信じている人たちがその傷ついている自分の兄弟をやっぱりそのね助けてあげたいっていう。
Nolan said when Americans were asked about the bomb and Urakami's suffering, they offered two responses.
One was sorrow for what had happened, regret, a sense of empathy and this sort of thing, learning about the suffering. And then the second is respect, and that is an admiration for the Urakami Catholics and what they endured in the aftermath of the bomb, but then also what they endured for centuries of persecution and suffering.
Nolan hopes the Nagasaki bell will ultimately help to heal old wounds between Japanese and Americans.
The response was one of seeing it as a kind of gesture of reconciliation, of solidarity between American and Japanese Catholics, of a kind of, healing and joy in the receiving of a gift like this.
The Nagasaki Bell Project made it possible for Kojiro Moriuchi to hear the bell ring again. His dream is for the Urakami Cathedral to become a pilgrimage site where people come from around the world to hear the St. Kateri Bell of Peace ring across Nagasaki. For Real to Real, I'm Steve Kiltonic.
Congratulations to Nolan for his dedication and determination to reach his goal to facilitate the healing between two nations that were once enemies.